The rain tapped against the glass as the neon sign outside flickered, its glow bleeding through the cracks of the broken diner window. The man sat alone at the booth, his plate barely touched. Food was a luxury now, rationed and stretched thin, but he had spent what little he had scraped together to buy this single meal. The world outside was rotting, cities collapsing under famine, skies gray with ash, the government tightening its grip with every passing year. He chewed slowly, each bite reminding him how long it might be before the next. Movement caught his attention. At first it was just the shuffle of small feet across the sticky floor, but then he heard a whisper, hesitant and brittle. "Can we have your leftovers?" For children stood before him, clothes torn, bodies trembling from hunger, their faces hollowed by weeks without enough food. They didn't beg loudly like street urchins often did. Their voices carried shame more than demand, and that made it cut deeper. He stared at them, at the tiny hands clenched against thin chests, and for a long moment said nothing. The easy choice was to ignore them. He had done so before, just like everyone else in this city. There wasn't enough food to go around, not for himself, not for anyone. But something in the way their eyes refused to meet his gaze stopped him. They were waiting, holding back hope as if it had betrayed them too many times already. His fork clinked against the plate as he slid it toward them, muttering under his breath that they should eat quickly. Their hands darted forward, tearing at the scraps like wolves. He told himself it was nothing, just wasted food he couldn't finish. Then he saw it. As the dim light from the diner's failing lamp struck their faces, their eyes caught it and reflected it back, glowing faintly, unnaturally. Blue, not the pale, human kind, but a sheen that pulsed faintly like embers in the dark. His chest tightened. Rumors had floated for years about the Purge, about how the government had hunted the last of the alien-born, claiming they were dangerous, resource thieves, abominations. Most people believed the extermination had been thorough. Yet here they were, sitting across from him, chewing hungrily with those impossible eyes. His instinct was to pull away. If the patrols outside saw them, or if a surveillance drone caught even a glimpse, he would be marked as a traitor for harboring them. The reward for turning in strays like these could feed him for months. His mind played both sides of the choice at once. Walk out now, leave them to fate, or say something, do something, and tie his future to theirs. The children didn't speak again, too afraid to risk it, but their eyes betrayed a silent plea. Not just for food, but for safety. He shifted uneasily in the booth, fingers drumming the cracked table. The government's stories echoed in his mind. Parasites, thieves, alien spawn. Yet nothing about these frail bodies or frightened stares matched those words. They looked like children. Hungry, broken, lost children. And he remembered the nights he had felt the same, scavenging scraps in alleys after his family was swallowed by famine. No one had stopped to help him then. He let out a low sigh, leaning closer, his voice barely audible over the hum of the diner's failing refrigeration unit. "When you're done, follow me." The children froze, scraps still in their hands, uncertainty clouding their faces. He forced a small nod, as if reassuring himself as much as them. The decision had already been made in that moment, though he hated himself for it. Compassion was dangerous. It could get him killed. Outside, a drone drifted past the window, red eyes scanning through the storm. He glanced at it, heart tightening. His life had been about survival, about staying invisible. But for the first time in years, he pushed aside fear and stood. The children watched, silent and trembling, their glowing eyes fixed on him with a fragile hope they had almost forgotten how to feel. The man didn't know where he would take them, or how long they could stay ahead of the ones hunting them. All he knew was that he couldn't walk away. Not this time. The streets beyond the diner smelled of rust and damp concrete, every corner watched by cameras that never blinked. He moved quickly, keeping his head down, and the children trailed after him like shadows. They made no sound except the scuff of their worn shoes against cracked pavement, too experienced in fear to risk even a whisper. He guided them through alleys narrow enough to choke a man, slipping between rusting pipes and broken fences where patrol drones rarely passed. His pulse hammered with each step, but he forced himself forward, choosing instinct over hesitation. When they stopped in the shell of an abandoned warehouse, the children collapsed onto the floor as if their legs had finally given out. He studied them in the dim light. Their faces were smeared with grime, cheeks sunken, bodies all sharp edges where flesh should have been. Yet it was their eyes, those faintly glowing orbs, that spoke loudest. They watched him with both suspicion and need, measuring whether he was savior or predator. He asked how long they had been alone, his voice low, almost afraid of the answer. The eldest, no more than 12, whispered that they had been running since the purge units came for their parents. Soldiers had dragged the adults away in the night, leaving only silence and fire in their wake. The 4 had survived by hiding in tunnels, raiding trash heaps, and avoiding every stranger they saw. His stomach tightened as he listened. The government's broadcasts had promised safety and order, had sworn that the blue-eyed scourge had been erased for humanity's protection. Yet the stories coming from these thin throats revealed only slaughter. He found himself staring at them longer than he should, remembering the official speeches, the parades celebrating the purge. The cheers of starving crowds promised more rations now that the aliens were gone. None of it had come true. The shelves had grown emptier, the skies darker, the people more broken. If these children were supposed to be the enemy, he couldn't see it. They were too frail, too scared, too human in everything but the light behind their eyes. Still, the weight of the choice pressed on him. He could take them to the nearest checkpoint and never worry about hunger again. Rewards for alien strays bought food, shelter, protection. But he thought of his own family, his mother's bones jutting under thin skin, his brother's cough that never stopped until it did. The government had promised to protect them too. They had died anyway, forgotten in the cracks of a world too eager to label some lives unworthy. A faint hum rattled the walls, pulling him from his thoughts. A surveillance drone swept down the street outside, its red lens cutting across the broken windows. The children shrank back instinctively, their breaths shallow. He pressed a finger to his lips, signaling silence, and waited until the sound faded. The danger was real, closing in with every minute. The longer they stayed, the higher the risk. He knelt before them, forcing his voice steady. "You can't stay here. They'll find you." The eldest opened her mouth to argue, but the fear in her eyes betrayed that she already knew. He told them he would lead them out of the city, beyond the grid where the patrols were weaker, where they might have a chance to disappear. Their faces lit with something fragile, not quite hope, not quite belief. They had been disappointed too many times to trust easily. For the first time in years, he felt the old fire stir in his chest, the stubborn refusal to bow that had once carried him through famine. He knew the risks. Helping them could brand him traitor, could end his life with a bullet in the dark. But looking into their glowing eyes, he realized he had already chosen. He would not let them be hunted like animals, not while he still had breath to fight. They moved through the city's underbelly, slipping into places where the light never reached. Rusted pipes dripped into black puddles, and the air reeked of oil and decay. He knew these paths from years of wandering, and each turn of his boots carried the children further from the search grids above. But no route was truly safe. The government had eyes everywhere, and already he could feel the weight of pursuit pressing down on them. One of the children stumbled, his legs too weak to carry him farther. Without hesitation, the man lifted him onto his back, the small body light as a bundle of rags. The others kept close, their glowing eyes darting nervously to every shadow. He told them nothing of the danger at their heels, but the silence that hung between them was heavy with knowing. Somewhere overhead, drones hummed like metal hornets, sweeping their lenses across the city. Their first close call came in the form of boots clattering on metal walkways. Patrolmen passed near the entrance to the tunnel, flashlights slicing the dark. He pressed the children against the wall, every muscle in his body stiff, heart pounding so loudly he was sure it would betray them. But the guards moved on, their laughter fading into the storm above. The children clung tighter to him after that, their trust silent but absolute. The farther they went, the more his resolve was tested. They came across a shop still open in the ruins, its shelves stripped bare except for stale bread. He traded a few coins for it, but the shopkeeper's eyes lingered on the children too long. The man saw suspicion blooming there, the temptation of reward money. He stared back, daring him to speak. In the end, the shopkeeper said nothing, but the warning was clear. Word would spread, and danger would follow faster. That night, huddled beneath a collapsed bridge, he broke the bread into uneven pieces. The children ate in silence, though their eyes kept watching him between bites. He could read the question in their faces. Why was he helping? He had no answer that would satisfy them. He barely understood it himself. All he knew was that every mile they put between themselves and the city, the more he felt alive. Protecting them gave his life meaning that had long been buried under survival's monotony. The next morning, they pushed on toward the city's edge. The streets grew emptier, but the risk greater, for the perimeter was sealed with checkpoints and scanners. As they drew closer, the sky filled with the whine of patrol drones, and squads of soldiers swept the roads with rifles ready. The man's gut twisted as he realized the net was tightening. Someone must have spoken. Perhaps the shopkeeper, perhaps another watchful eye along the way. They ducked into an old drainage culvert, the air thick with mold, and there they waited while soldiers passed. The youngest child shivered, whispering that she could hear them talking about blue eyes, about orders to kill on sight. Rage flared in his chest, hot and consuming. They weren't soldiers. They were executioners. The world had accepted lies so easily, feeding on hatred while children starved. He forced the group onward, urgency burning in his veins. Every step felt like a countdown, every sound from above a signal that time was almost gone. They were close now, he could feel it, the outer gates where the wasteland began, where the government's hand grew weaker. But the noose was drawing tight around them. The city was becoming a cage, and he knew their only chance was to break through it before it snapped shut. The gates loomed ahead, towering slabs of steel crowned with razor wire, the final barrier between the city and the wastelands beyond. Floodlights swept the road, catching the rain in sharp, white beams. Soldiers patrolled the perimeter with rifles slung low, their boots crunching against gravel. The man felt the children tighten around him as they drew closer, fear radiating from their small frames. There would be no turning back now. They crept from shadow to shadow until a shout split the night. A beam of light fell across them, and the silence shattered into chaos. Soldiers surged forward, weapons raised, and the children froze. Without thinking, the man pushed them behind him and drew the rusted pipe he had carried for years. It was nothing against rifles, but his grip was steady. He swung with raw desperation, the metal crunching against armor, and one soldier fell. Another came at him, rifle butt slamming into his ribs, but he refused to drop. Pain flared white-hot, yet he pressed forward, striking again, forcing space for the children to run. The world became a blur of gunfire and shouts. He fought like a cornered animal, each breath ragged, each movement fueled not by strength, but by will. 2 soldiers fell, then 3, but more poured in. He could feel the weight of numbers pressing against him, the inevitability of collapse. Still, he would not yield. Behind him, the children darted toward the fence, their glowing eyes flashing in the dark like beacons of another world. A bullet tore through his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. He coughed blood, vision swimming, but forced himself back to his knees. One of the children cried out, trying to return to him, but he barked for them to run. His voice cracked, but the command carried the weight of finality. They hesitated only a heartbeat before obeying, scrambling through a gap in the wire as alarms wailed across the compound. As he staggered to his feet again, something changed. The children's eyes, once faint glimmers, blazed with a sudden intensity. The light pulsed outward in waves, unseen by the soldiers, but felt in the man's bones. The guards faltered, movements disjointed, as if unseen threads pulled at their minds. The children did not fight, they simply ran, but their presence bent the chaos, just enough for escape to become possible. The man fell once more, his strength gone, the world narrowing to a tunnel of darkness and sound. He saw their figures vanish into the wasteland, small silhouettes swallowed by night, and a faint smile touched his lips. He had done enough. His body would remain behind, another forgotten casualty of a war no one admitted still raged, but the children would live. That knowledge filled him with a peace deeper than he had felt in years. In the days that followed, whispers spread. Stories of blue-eyed children seen beyond the wall, of soldiers who faltered without reason, of a man who fought alone against impossible odds so that they might escape. No one knew his name, but the tale carried on, spoken in hushed tones across the slums and the wastelands alike. And in the silence of the desert, far from the city's grip, for children huddled together beneath the stars. Their eyes glowed like fragments of a forgotten dawn, and though fear still lingered, so too did something stronger. They remembered the man who had chosen them over safety, compassion over survival. His sacrifice became their fire, their reason to endure, their proof that humanity's heart still beat even in the darkest age. For the first time since the Purge, they believed the future might hold more than hunger and death. And somewhere in the vast wasteland, their journey had only just begun.